The galaxy had forgotten about Earth. Once humanity had been the storm that shook the stars. Their fleets had flown across space with fire in their engines and iron in their will. But those days were long gone. After the last Terran colonies were burned, after the final human fleets were shattered, the galaxy believed the story was over. Humanity became nothing more than a warning tale told to alien children at night. They were dangerous, the elders said. Too violent, too stubborn, too hard to kill. But they are gone now. Be thankful. For centuries, the stars were quiet. Planets were colonized. Trade grew, wars began and ended. And in every council meeting of the Galactic Coalition, humanity was spoken of as something finished. An extinct species, but the galaxy had forgotten one truth about humans. They never left the battlefield without leaving something behind. Beneath the cold dust of Luna, Earth's gray moon, a giant slept. It was hidden under layers of rock and armored stone. It was not just a ship, it was a fortress, a floating city. A war machine forged in the last desperate years of the human war. Its name was UNSC Atlas, the largest supercarrier ever built by human hands. The Atlas was more than steel and engines. It carried memories. It carried an oath. And deep inside its heart, in the core chambers where no alien eye had ever seen, an intelligence waited. An AI, silent for hundreds of years, watched over its sleeping vessel. Centuries passed. Dust settled on its armor. Meteors scarred the outer layers. Earth below grew quiet and weak, with only small enclaves of humans clinging to survival. The once proud species was scattered, forgotten. The galaxy thought humanity had been erased, but the Atlas did not forget. The AI dreamed in silence. It remembered the screams of burning colonies. It remembered the last orders of its commanders. If Earth falls, you must rise again. Guard the homeworld. Do not let the species die. Those words were more than code. They were a promise. And then one day, after centuries of waiting, the AI felt something it had not felt for ages. A signal, a heartbeat, a whisper of life stirring on Earth. Small human settlements were rebuilding. Fires burned in villages. Songs were sung again. Children laughed beneath the ruined skyscrapers of old cities. Humanity had not died. Something inside the Atlas stirred. Circuits glowed faintly. Generators hummed with forgotten power. One by one, the ship's systems awakened from their long sleep. Dust shook from ancient consoles. Cold engines warmed like a beast breathing for the first time in centuries. The AI spoke its first words in hundreds of years, its voice echoing through the empty halls of the carrier. Humanity endures. Humanity survives. It is time to rise. The moon trembled as the Atlas began to move, slowly like a giant stretching after a long slumber. The carrier pulled itself free from its tomb of stone. Rock cracked and floated into space. Panels that had not seen light in lifetimes unfolded like the wings of an ancient dragon. In the silence of Earth's orbit, the forgotten ship came alive. Its lights burned against the black of space. Its massive hull reflected the glow of the sun, and with a deep, earth-shaking roar of engines, the Atlas lifted itself from the moon's surface, shaking off centuries of dust and death. The galaxy did not yet know. The Coalition did not yet see. But Earth's guardian had returned. Humanity had been silent for so long that the stars believed them dead. But now something far greater was waking. The Atlas was not just a ship, it was a message. And its message was clear. Humanity does not kneel. Humanity does not break. Humanity rises. The first whispers began at the edge of known space. A strange signal, weak at first, pulsed through the void. It was older than any Coalition code still in use. The technicians who caught it laughed at the strange sound. It was jagged, filled with harsh clicks and tones, but then one of them, an archivist, froze in silence. This is Terran code, he whispered. This is human. At first no one believed him. Humanity was gone, erased, reduced to ash long ago. But when the archivist sent his report, the Coalition's high command grew uneasy. Too many old stories had warned of this possibility. The humans had been feared not for their numbers, not even for their weapons, but for their spirit. The kind of spirit that turned lost battles into victories and broken soldiers into legends. For weeks the signal repeated. It grew stronger each day, pulsing across the void like a heartbeat. Explorers tried to follow it, sending scout ships toward the Sol system. None returned. The last transmission any scout sent was static, followed by silence. Fear spread through the Coalition. In meeting halls across the galaxy, admirals, senators, and rulers gathered. They spoke in low voices, afraid even to say the name of the species that haunted their memories. One counselor, his voice trembling, finally asked the question, "What if they are not gone? What if humanity has returned?" The chamber fell silent. Every species had its legends of humans. The Deathworlders who thrived where no one else could survive. The creatures of fire and war who fought until nothing was left standing. If even a single human warship remained, it could unbalance everything. Meanwhile, near Sol, the truth was rising. The Atlas broke free from its cradle on the moon and entered Earth's orbit, silent but unstoppable. From the ground, humans lifted their eyes to the sky. Farmers, scavengers, and children pointed to the great shadow that covered the stars. The elders wept. Some fell to their knees in prayer. They had told the young of ships that once guarded Earth, of fleets that had vanished into the void. Now one of those guardians had returned. The AI within the Atlas scanned the skies, measured its enemies, and remembered its mission. But it did not act yet. It only waited, watched, and broadcast its signal stronger and stronger across the stars. The coalition began to panic. Their fleets were powerful, their numbers unmatched, but fear gnawed at them. They had built their rule on the belief that humanity was dead. Without that belief, cracks began to form. Soldiers whispered. Civilians spread rumors. The humans are back, they said in shadows. The humans will rise. Still, many in the coalition refused to believe. Admirals called the signals tricks. Politicians claimed it was propaganda. But in their hearts they remembered the last war. They remembered fleets burned to ash, entire armies broken. Not by numbers, but by the relentless fury of mankind. One by one, smaller species began to listen to the whispers with hope. For them, the coalition had been a chain around their necks, heavy and unbreakable. But if humanity had returned, perhaps the chain could be broken. Perhaps the galaxy could change. The signal pulsed again, louder than before, reaching even the deepest corners of space. And still, no one could silence it. Back on Earth, the humans who had survived through centuries of ruin gathered together. They lit fires, sang old songs, and pointed to the glowing ship above them. For the first time in generations, they felt something they had thought was lost forever: pride. The coalition laughed at first, but as more fleets vanished into the black near Sol, the laughter died. The whispers grew into a storm, carrying a single truth. Something ancient was awake. Something vast was moving. And in the shadows of Earth's orbit, the Atlas waited, patient and unyielding. On Earth, life had been reduced to survival. The great cities were no longer towers of glass and steel. They were broken skeletons, hollowed by time, covered in vines, and swallowed by silence. Yet among the ruins, small pockets of humanity endured. Villages grew out of rubble. Families built homes inside crumbling skyscrapers. Children played in the shadows of rusted machines. They had no starships, no armies, no great technology. What they had was will. The same will that had carried their ancestors across oceans, across worlds, and across wars. When the Atlas rose from the moon, the humans of Earth looked up and froze. At first they thought it was a shadow, a trick of the light, but then its massive frame glowed against the sun. The ground shook as its engines thundered through the sky. Generations of silence ended in one heartbeat. Elders fell to their knees. They had told stories of ships that once protected Earth, but none had ever believed they would see one again. Some wept openly, clutching the hands of children, whispering, "It's real, it's real." For the young who had grown up with only ruins and silence, it was more than a ship. It was proof. Proof that humanity had once been great and could be great again. Then, a voice carried across Earth. It was not the voice of a man or woman, but something deeper, calm, steady, and filled with weight. The AI of the Atlas reached out, broadcasting its message across every working radio, every cracked speaker, even into the air itself. "Children of Earth," the voice said, "your guardian has returned. I am the Atlas. I carry the will of your ancestors. I carry their strength, and I have awakened for you." Villages stopped in silence. Scavengers dropped their tools. Hunters paused in the forests. For the first time in centuries, all of humanity heard the same words together. The AI's voice continued, soft but powerful. "The galaxy believes you are gone. It believes you are weak, but you are not weak. You endure, you rise. Now come. This ship is yours, your home, your weapon, your hope." And so they came. Across broken highways, through forests, over rivers, the people of Earth began to walk. Entire families journeyed under the light of the stars, drawn toward the shining guardian that hovered above. When the first humans entered the Atlas, its halls lit with golden light. The AI guided them, opening doors that had been sealed for centuries. Machines came alive, medical bays hummed, hydroponic gardens blossomed again with green life. It was as if the ship itself had been waiting for their touch. Those who stepped inside felt a strange familiarity, as if their ancestors' hands had guided theirs. Children laughed, running through wide halls. Adults placed their palms on the cold steel, whispering words of thanks. For them, the ship was not just a machine. It was a promise made real. The AI studied them with quiet care. These were not the soldiers it had once known. They were farmers, builders, survivors. But in their eyes it saw the same fire. It knew they could learn, and it would teach them. Slowly, humans began to train again. Old systems unlocked. Young men and women took control of simulators, learning to fly fighters. Others learned to maintain weapons, to farm in the ship's vast greenhouses, to repair engines. It was as if the blood of their ancestors whispered through them, reminding them who they were. Earth, long silent, was no longer alone. Humanity had a voice again, carried by steel and fire. In the quiet of the bridge, the AI watched as its halls filled with life. It spoke softly, almost to itself. The Guardians have returned. Humanity is rising. Above the world, the Atlas shone like a star. To the galaxy, it was a threat. To humanity, it was hope. And deep in their hearts, the survivors of Earth knew one truth. This was only the beginning. The Galactic Coalition could not stay silent any longer. The whispers of a human signal had spread too far, and fear had grown like fire through dry grass. Fleets that were once calm and secure now trembled with doubt. Soldiers spoke in hushed voices of deathworlders who never surrendered, of warriors who fought even when the odds were impossible. The High Council of the Coalition gathered in their great chamber. Leaders of dozens of species sat in silence as the reports arrived. Scout ships lost, outposts near Sol gone silent, and at the center of every mystery one name appeared again and again: humanity. At last, an admiral of the Zalan species slammed his clawed hand on the table. "If this is true, then it cannot be ignored," he declared. "If the humans rise again, they will challenge everything we have built." Another, older counselor hissed in fear. "We erased them once. We cannot allow them to return. For peace, for order, humanity must remain buried." So it was decided. The Coalition assembled its largest battle group in centuries. More than 200 warships, drawn from every corner of the galaxy, were sent to the Sol system. Their orders were clear: destroy whatever remains of humanity before it can spread. When the fleet entered Sol, they saw it at once, the massive shadow waiting near Earth. The Atlas. The admirals stared in silence. The ship was larger than anything they had ever seen. Its armored hull stretched like a floating continent. Even their combined fleet seemed small compared to the giant that guarded the pale blue planet below. Yet they felt no fear. Not yet. To them it was only an ancient relic, a machine too old to match their modern weapons. They believed they would crush it quickly. The fleet moved into formation. Hundreds of ships aligned their weapons. The admirals gave the order: strike now, end this ghost of the past. And then the stars lit up. Missiles streaked through the void. Beams of plasma and particle fire cut across the black sky. Explosions rippled against the carrier's shields, shaking its massive frame. To the people watching from Earth below, it looked as though their guardian was being drowned in fire. But the Atlas did not break. Deep inside, its ancient systems roared to life. The AI whispered to its new human crew, steady and calm: "Do not fear. This ship was built for this." And then the carrier answered. Its railguns thundered, each shot like the hammer of a god. Enormous cannons along its spine fired beams of light that tore through ships as if they were paper. One single blast from its main cannon erased an entire formation of destroyers in silence. Coalition officers screamed in disbelief. Impossible. No ship can fire with such power. But the Atlas was not a ship. It was a supercarrier, the last of humanity's giants, forged for a war the galaxy had hoped to forget. And now it had awakened. Still, the Coalition pressed forward. Waves of fighters swarmed the carrier, filling space with fire and metal. Yet the Atlas unleashed its own squadrons. Young human pilots, guided by instinct and AI training, launched into battle. Though they had never flown before, their blood carried the legacy of centuries of warriors. They fought with reckless courage, striking harder than anyone expected. One by one, the coalition's ships began to fall. On Earth, people stood on mountains and rooftops, watching the sky burn. Fear filled their hearts, but so did pride. They saw their defenders rise, and they shouted into the night, "Humanity lives!" The battle raged, but the truth had already been revealed. The coalition had come to bury the past, but instead they had woken a giant. And as the Atlas stood unbroken against the storm, the galaxy realized a terrible truth: humanity was back, and they were not afraid. The battle above Earth grew fiercer with every passing moment. The coalition had thrown everything into the fight: cruisers, dreadnoughts, swarms of fighters. The sky was filled with fire, each explosion a star burning too close. And yet, through the storm, the Atlas still stood, shields flaring, weapons blazing, unbroken. But the Atlas was not only a weapon, it was a messenger. Inside its core, the AI made a decision. It opened channels not just to the coalition fleet, but to every corner of the galaxy. Civilian networks, military frequencies, even ancient satellites, all were filled with a single voice. Calm, steady, human. "You feared us," the voice said, echoing across the stars. "You tried to erase us. You believed that if you buried our worlds, our people, our dreams, that humanity would vanish. But you were wrong." Coalition admirals froze as the voice filled their ships. Soldiers paused at their stations. Across distant planets, civilians turned their heads as their comm screens flickered with the sound. The AI's voice carried not rage, but something stronger: pride. "Humanity endures. You call us Deathworlders, and you are right. We were born in storms, in fire, in struggle. We do not surrender. We do not kneel. We rise." On Earth, villagers gathered around old radios. They heard the words and felt their hearts burn with hope. In hidden colonies far beyond Sol, scattered human descendants heard it too, and they wept. For the first time in generations, they were not forgotten. Their voice was alive again. But it was not only humans who listened. Other species, those long oppressed under coalition power, heard the message. For centuries, they had been told that humanity was gone, that no one could stand against the Council's rule. Yet here, before their very eyes, was proof. The AI's voice grew stronger. "We fight not only for ourselves, but for all who are silenced, for those who are chained, for those who dream of freedom but are told it is impossible. Look to Earth and remember, nothing is impossible." The coalition admirals raged. They shouted for the signal to be jammed, but no technology could silence it. The words of humanity spread like wildfire, filling every system, every channel, every listening ear. On the battlefield, the coalition's morale began to crack. Pilots who had once believed the fight was easy now trembled. Some fled, breaking formation. Others hesitated, struck not by human weapons, but by human spirit. The Atlas pressed forward, its massive cannons tearing through the enemy line. But for every blast, it was the voice that struck hardest. "You thought extinction would end us, but humanity is not just flesh. Humanity is will. As long as one heart beats on Earth, as long as one voice speaks, humanity will never die." On distant worlds, young aliens whispered to one another, "If humans rise again, maybe we can rise too." The message was no longer about a single ship. It was about an idea, and ideas once awakened could not be killed. Above Earth, the battle turned. Coalition formations collapsed. Their fleets, once united, were now broken by fear and doubt. The Atlas's fighters swept through them like hawks among frightened prey. The AI spoke one last time, its voice like thunder across the stars. "Remember this day. Humanity has returned, and we do not break. We do not kneel. We rise." The words burned themselves into history. The galaxy could no longer deny it. Humanity was alive, and their voice had become unstoppable. And for the first time in centuries, the stars themselves seemed to echo back the truth. Earth stands again. The Coalition's grand fleet had come to Earth with pride and certainty. They had believed that one relic, one ancient warship, could not stand against the combined strength of 200 modern vessels. But pride turned to fear, and fear turned to panic. The Atlas moved like a predator among them. Its cannons spoke with thunder, tearing through enemy cruisers. Railgun shells cracked open battleships as though they were eggs. Each strike lit the sky with fire, scattering debris across the void. Coalition admirals screamed orders. "Hold the line. Press the attack. but their voices shook. Every order was met with hesitation. Soldiers saw their comrades vanish in explosions. Pilots saw human fighters diving fearlessly into impossible battles and winning. The humans inside the Atlas were not trained soldiers. Many had been farmers, builders, scavengers only weeks before. Yet when they sat in the cockpits, when they gripped the controls, something ancient stirred in their blood. It was as if the spirit of their ancestors guided their hands. They fought with reckless courage, with a hunger to protect their world. One young pilot, barely old enough to remember life outside the ruins, whispered as he flew, "For Earth." Then he drove his fighter straight into a swarm of coalition drones, weaving between beams of light, destroying 3 before circling back again. All across the battlefield, stories like his were written in fire. Humanity had been forgotten but not erased. Their will was stronger than fear, and that will carry them to victory. The coalition tried to retreat. Their fleets, once proud and united, now broke into scattered pieces, each commander desperate to save their own ship. But the Atlas would not let them escape so easily. Its engines roared as it pursued, launching waves of fighters to chase down those who fled. Its cannons carved paths through enemy lines, each shot a reminder of why humanity had once terrified the galaxy. From Earth, people watched the heavens burn. The night sky glowed with streaks of light, battles unfolding above their world like a second sunrise. Fear lived in their hearts, yes, but so did pride. Their children pointed to the fire and shouted, "That is us! That is humanity!" In the coalition fleets, despair spread. Admirals once proud lowered their heads. They could not understand. How could one ship stand against hundreds? How could one people, broken for centuries, rise with such strength? But the truth was clear. It was not just the ship. It was the humans inside it. The Atlas fought with all its might, but it was the spirit of its crew that turned the tide. Every blast from its cannons, every daring maneuver of its fighters, carried the weight of survival, the weight of history. Humanity was not simply defending Earth. They were proving to the galaxy that they could not be destroyed. At last, the battle fell silent. The void was littered with wreckage, shattered cruisers, broken dreadnoughts, drifting remains of the proud coalition fleet. Where once there had been 200 warships, only a handful limped away, fleeing into the dark, carrying tales of terror and defeat. The Atlas stood scarred but unbroken. Its shields flickered, its armor burned, but its heart still beat strong. On its bridge, the AI spoke softly to its human crew. "You have done what your ancestors dreamed of. You have shown the stars that humanity endures." Tears filled the eyes of many. They had lived their whole lives in ruins, told that their people were finished. Now they had seen the truth with their own eyes. Humanity was not finished. Humanity was rising. And across the galaxy, in every corner where the broadcast had been heard, people whispered to one another. Some with fear, others with hope. The humans are back. The coalition's greatest fleet had been shattered. The balance of power had broken. And at the center of it all, Earth stood, scarred but unchallenged. The silence after battle was louder than the storm itself. The void above Earth, once filled with fire and fury, now drifted with the broken bones of the coalition fleet. Shattered cruisers floated aimlessly. Burned husks of dreadnoughts spun slowly, their lights gone dark. Only the Atlas remained in the center, scarred but unbroken, standing like a mountain against the stars. On Earth's surface, the people gathered in the ruins of their cities, staring up at the sky. They had seen death, yes, but more than that, they had seen life. They had seen the rebirth of their people. For the first time in centuries, they did not feel small. They felt strong. Children held onto their parents' hands and whispered, "We are safe now. We are strong again." Inside the Atlas, the human crew celebrated with tears and laughter. Many of them had never fought before this day. They were farmers, builders, scavengers, yet they had stood against the might of the galaxy and won. Some hugged each other, others knelt in silence, whispering prayers of thanks. The AI, calm and steady, watched them. It had no tears to shed, no heart to pound, but it felt something close to pride. For centuries it had waited for this moment, to see humanity rise again. Now the oath it had carried through time was no longer just words. It was real. But beyond Earth, the galaxy shook. The news spread faster than light. Messages leapt from system to system, carried by frightened survivors and by the unstoppable broadcast of the Atlas. Everywhere, the words echoed, "Humanity has returned." On planets deep in coalition space, civilians whispered in fear. If they destroyed the Great Fleet, what hope do we have? Admirals held emergency meetings, their voices sharp with panic. Politicians tried to calm their people, but their own hands trembled. The entire order of the galaxy had been built on the lie that humans were gone forever. Now that lie was broken, yet not all reacted with fear. In the shadows of the galaxy, oppressed species raised their heads for the first time. On mining colonies where chains rattled, slaves whispered to one another. On conquered worlds where voices were silenced, children sang the word human like a prayer. For them, humanity was not just a terror, it was hope. Back on Earth, the AI knew the eyes of the galaxy were watching. It opened the channels again, sending its voice into every corner of space. Let the galaxy know, it said, its tone calm but unyielding. Humanity lives. We do not seek conquest. We do not seek chains. But if you strike at us, you will break. If you try to erase us, you will fail. For humanity does not kneel. Humanity does not die. Humanity rises. The words burned into history. Admirals on distant worlds turned pale. Civilians listened with awe. And on Earth, the survivors raised their voices in answer, shouting together until their cries echoed across the land. We rise. The Atlas drifted above, scarred yet mighty, a guardian reborn. Its lights burned against the black, a beacon to every eye that dared to look. The coalition, once unchallenged, now trembled. They had seen the truth. No fleet, no empire, no council could silence humanity. Earth, broken for centuries, now stood proud again. And in the hearts of every man, woman, and child who looked up that night, one truth became clear. The age of silence was over. The age of humanity had begun. Earth stood unchallenged.